Welcome.
Bienvenue.
National Defense. Pursuant to the motion adopted on September 16, 2025, the committee is meeting to commence a briefing with the Minister of National Defense on the main estimates and supplementary estimates and the Minister's mandate and NATO defense spending. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person in the room or remotely using a Zoom application. Before we continue, I ask all in-person participants to consult the guidelines on the table. The measures help prevent audio feedback incidents to protect the health and safety of participants and the interpreters. And as a matter of protocol, I'll remind witnesses and members to please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. And for those participating by video conferencing, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And for those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, please use the earpiece and select the desired channel. And as a reminder, all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And for members on the Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will try to manage all the speaking orders as best we can, and we do appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. Now, I'd like to welcome our witnesses. The Honorable David McGuinty, Minister of National Defense, thank you for being here. And thank you for also agreeing to come yet again in short order. General Jenny Carnigan, the Chief of National Defense in the Canadian Armed Forces, thank you. Mario Pelletier, Commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard. Carolyn Xavier, Chief of Communications Security Establishment. Natasha Kim, Associate Deputy Minister of the Department of National Defense. Heather Shishi, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Material of the Department of National Defense. Jonathan Moore, Chief Financial Officer of the Department of National Defense. I will now invite the Minister to his opening remarks. You have up to 5 minutes. Welcome again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all members for inviting me to appear here today. I think you've just had my colleagues introduced to you, so I won't bother reintroducing them. But they're all here, of course, to continue on after I'm not able to stay. And I may very well turn to them, if I could, colleagues, during the line of questioning for their insight and their experience as the operational experts in the Department and the Canadian Armed Forces. Since my appointment, Mr. Chair and colleagues, in May, I've had the privilege of working with an exceptional team. Dedicated public servants, military leaders, and civilian experts who are helping to strengthen Canada's defence and security. I've also travelled across Canada and to Europe to meet with the brave women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces repeatedly. I've concluded their contributions to Canada are simply second to none. Au sein de toute notre équipe, j'ai constaté.
Across our entire team, I have seen renewed motivation and a sense of urgency in the face of evolving threats. Together, we are taking bold steps to rebuild, re-equip, and reinvest in our military. We're focusing on ensuring that the CAF is well equipped, well supported, and ready to accomplish any mission. This can only be happened if we make generational investments in our capabilities, our operations, and our personnel.
Canada is investing nearly $63 billion in defence this fiscal year alone. This includes over $9 billion in new funding, which the Prime Minister announced in June. So let me start with where it really counts, where it all begins, and that is with our people. One of the greatest privileges of this job is meeting members of the Canadian Armed Forces, hearing their stories, their pride in serving Canada, and the challenges that come with that service. To better support them, we announced major improvements to the CAF compensation and benefits package just this August. Members across all ranks will see their pay increase by 8 to 20%, depending on rank, through adjustments to the military factor, which recognizes the unique demands of military life. Many will also see additional increases based on years of service, on occupation, or deployment status. Colleagues, this is a long overdue and well-deserved pay increase for our forces. Investir dans nos forces signifie également
Investing in our forces also means attracting more talent to strengthen our ranks. That's why we are modernizing our recruitment processes, notably by introducing a trial period, removing outdated medical standards, and implementing new digital tools to help candidates join more quickly. This means that we can recruit more people faster and retain them. I am pleased to announce to this committee that this year recruitment has reached its highest level in 10 years.
Not only to recruit people, but also to retain them. As part of our efforts to rebuild our forces, we continue to advance culture change, ensuring a safe, inclusive, trustworthy, and respectful workplace for our members. And through Bill C-11, we are modernizing the military justice system, reinforcing principles of fairness and accountability for our people in uniform. I'm pleased to note that this bill completed second reading in the House 2 weeks ago and will shortly be coming to this committee for further study. And I thank each and every one of you for your support. I look forward to returning to committee to speak about this important legislation, and I eagerly await the outcomes of your important study of the bill. As we invest in the next generation of CAF members, we're also making crucial investments in our military capabilities, specifically the equipment and the infrastructure that enable CAF operations. That includes building our fleet of River-class destroyers, procuring future fighter aircraft, and modernizing ground and communication systems from top to bottom. Let me be clear. Across all of our projects, we're focused on value for money and ensuring this work creates jobs and supports the Canadian economy. To drive these efforts further, we're developing a brand new defence industrial strategy to strengthen Canada's defence industrial space, a national first. And we recently launched the new Defence Investment Agency to cut red tape and accelerate delivery of equipment to our troops. Finally, we remain focused, Mr. Chair, on operations, both at home and abroad. Throughout the year, we have thousands of CAF members deployed across the country, in Europe, and the Indo-Pacific, and beyond. Their vital work reinforces our commitments to NATO, to NORAD, and our global partners. Likewise, our colleagues in the Communications Security Establishment and the Canadian Coast Guard make critical contributions to our defence and security. Mr. Chair, before concluding today, I want to acknowledge that earlier today the Auditor General released 2 reports covering CAF housing and CAF recruitment. These are good reports. They're important reports. We thank her for those reports. We welcome the recommendations. Not only are they an integral part of ensuring fairness, transparency, and openness in how we conduct government operations, they also give us the crucial information and the guidance about what we're doing well and where we need to improve. After all, the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces deserve that. It's a busy time for defence. I look forward to discussing our priorities with you in more detail. And I look forward mostly, Mr. Chair, through you to all the members, in openness and utmost sincerity, to your constructive and thoughtful suggestions for improvement. We are in this together. The women and the men of the Canadian Armed Forces are counting on us. Merci. Je suis prêt à répondre à vos questions.
Thank you. I'm now prepared to take your questions.
Minister, for your opening remarks. I will pass it on to our Vice Chair, who has 6 minutes. James Bazan, over to you.
Mr. Chair, before you start the clock, I just want to give notice of motion that the committee invite the Auditor General to appear for no less than 2 hours to discuss her reports tabled on October 21st, 2025, including recruiting for Canada's military, housing Canadian Armed Forces members, and cybersecurity of government networks and systems, and that the committee invite the Minister of National Defence and relevant officials to appear in a separate 2-hour meeting to address the government responses to the above Auditor General reports, and that both meetings take place before December 12th, 2025. I'll start my round of questions. Thank you, Minister, for appearing. I appreciate that. Time is precious, so I'll go quick. Earlier this fall in September, Vice Admiral Angus Topshee said the Royal Canadian Navy should consider having 2 separate fleets of submarines. Then that was followed that very same day. Reporters asked Prime Minister Carney in New York, and he responded that nothing that I see would suggest that we would have a mixed fleet in submarines. You just get too many efficiencies and economies of having one fleet. Do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with the Prime Minister's statement. After we down-selected from 5 to 2, thereby accelerating the process by a full 2 years, James, it put us in a better position to be able to negotiate with 2 potential suppliers to maximize our benefits, to get the submarines that we need, and there is definitely a question of economies of scale here.
Thank you for that. Minister, you said earlier this summer that you told reporters that you would make a decision on the F-35s by the end of summer. That's already a month past. You also said that you would consider the decisions taken by your department officials, Chief of Defense Staff, the Royal Canadian Air Force Commander, and the Deputy Minister have all come out saying the F-35 is the plane that they need. So just wondering, when are you going to make a decision on this review, and how much more is it costing us every time we start playing politics with this procurement?
Well, you won't be surprised that I disagree with your categorization that this is about politics. This is about ensuring we take the time, colleagues, to get this right. This is a very big purchase for Canada. There are many elements involved in that purchase, many parts, but we are reviewing it. It is well underway. It's continuing. The review is continuing. We've been participating in this program since its inception in 1996. It was, as you know, conceived, developed, and continues to be operated jointly, 8 founding countries. So right now that review continues, colleagues, and obviously we're going to take the time we need.
You mentioned the defense industrial strategy. What happens if you go with a different aircraft than the F-35? There's already thousands of jobs that are tied to the F-35 in Canada and the production. Over 2,000, from what I can gather, in places like Winnipeg and Montreal and Richmond, BC. Are we at risk of losing those jobs if you select a different aircraft?
That's an important question, and it's one that obviously the folks who are conducting the review would be compelled to look at, I would think. It is not me who's conducting that review, it's our officials.
That he says that this is an irritant and this dragging on of the F-35 contract. This plane won in a competition that your government ran. I know that you guys have decided to pause that, but we are committed to the first 16. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And if we don't buy the rest of the aircraft, have you talked to the consortium and the joint project office on whether or not the jobs that are tied to the production and the future maintenance of not just the Canadian F-35s, but the entire fleet of F-35s that are part of our allied and coalition partners that could potentially be coming through the sustainment side, the maintenance side, the engine overhaul that could be happening at depots in places like Montreal and Winnipeg?
All of these important questions, Mr. Bazan, are part, I'm sure, of the review that's ongoing. You're right in indicating that there are 37 Canadian companies that have contracts now supplying goods and services for the F-35. There are millions of dollars accruing to Canadian industrial benefits per plane that are purchased, manufactured, and sold. So we'll obviously take the time we need to get this right. It's a very major acquisition, and there are many questions here that we're trying to address at the same time.
On the defense industrial side as well, and you talk about also support for Ukraine. We know that the Liberal government had promised to buy 25 refurbished LAVs that were going to be refurbished by Armatech just outside of London, Ontario. Now we're hearing that contract has been paused or canceled. Nobody at Armatech can talk because they're under a gag order from the Liberal government. Ukraine is saying they want those armored vehicles, and they're not being delivered. Why, in that one decision to cancel that contract, you're both turning your back on Ukraine and turning your back on the defense industry here in Canada?
There is a decision that's been taken to nullify the contract with that company presently, so obviously I can't go any further in terms of discussing the merits of it. We'll see how that evolves in terms of the relationship between the department and the contractor. It's important for Canadians to remember there are several types of vehicles that are being shipped to Ukraine, and We've already shipped 89 armored combat support vehicles to Ukraine, 49 of which were delivered between the fall of 2022 and the fall of 2024. The remaining vehicles are currently being delivered, with the final vehicle scheduled to arrive before the end of this year. So quite a bit of supply, quite a bit of material has been supplied. And of course, the most recent...
No, Minister, a lot of that equipment has been destroyed in the war. That the drone warfare that has taken place there has diminished the capabilities of a lot of the land vehicles that we had sent over. So why wouldn't we want to supply these ones that contract was already awarded? The announcement was already made. Why not carry through and give Ukraine what they want and support Canadian jobs here at home?
Give you more insight into the reasoning behind the department's decision to cancel the contract, but I'm not in a position to do so. But I would say this: we have, of course, we were one of the first 3 or 4 in the world to purchase a $500 million package for Ukrainian material through the Pearl program in the United States, for material chosen by the Ukrainian military authorities. That's already being delivered, and a lot of that, of course, constitutes drones and drone technologies and anti-drone equipment. So we're there. I just came back from the NATO meeting. There's a very strong resolve by Canada and NATO as well as a whole to continue to support the brave women and men in Ukraine who are fighting a very difficult war.
Thank you, Mr. Bazan. Over to you, Mr. Watchorn. You have up to 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci à tous les témoins d'être ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here. It's very informative for us, for our work. Thank you, Minister. I'll start by saying this. I think you know we've had an enormously positive experience at the Petawawa Air Base in a couple of weeks ago, and we met with the forces there. There are major investments that are being made. We're trying to increase wages. We're trying to do something about housing. We're looking at buying equipment. Minister, I know you've seen more or less all of the bases in Canada, met with people there. I'd like to know what the members have said when you've met with them. When I met with them, they were quite pleased. I'm curious about how they feel about our investments. First thing to share is the level of surprise. When I meet with members of our Canadian Armed Forces, men and women alike, not only the issue of investments in wages and benefits, but also continued investments in water systems, building of housing, daycare centers, infrastructure on the 33 bases, the purchase of fighter jets, submarines, tanks, and the list is long. People are shocked. They are actually surprised by the speed at which this is happening. For instance, 2 weeks ago, we bought a building that had 37 apartments within it in Esquimalt. It's the first time the department, to my knowledge, has participated in the purchase of a private building. And the time it took between the decision and the bid and the purchase was 5 weeks. That's unheard of within the department. That's the speed at which we're doing things because we realize the urgency of rebuilding, rearming, and reinvesting for our armed forces. The response that I'm getting on the ground is positive. They're somewhat surprised, but they're very pleased. They're grateful. They're happy. Thank you very much for this answer. I think the forces have been neglected, and the time has come to really invest, and it's happening. You know, Minister, that Canada has a clear plan to get to 2% of NATO's spending during the course of this fiscal year. We're investing in armed forces by increasing wages, supporting Ukraine with what it needs to win, and we're investing in essential military capabilities for Canada. This historic investment's purpose is to guarantee that we are investing in our fair share to the alliance. Canada and the allies have agreed on a new investment scope until 2020. Over the next few years, we will reach 3.some%. What is our plan to meet this NATO target? Do we have a couple of hours to answer your question? There's an entire list. For instance, we decided to extend our involvement in Latvia with over 3,000 members. This is a major investment. This is for an extra 3 years. Recruitment has increased by 50% in the last fiscal year. That's the highest increase in the last 10 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. What mattered at first was the number one goal was to invest in our people, and the decision was made to make these changes to wages and benefits. Recruitment is increasing. Equipment is continuing to be purchased. The water filtration systems have to be fixed, and the list is long. We have broken this down in tranches, and the most important implementation is set with timelines where we are addressing the issues in a disciplined way. Do I still have time, Mr. Chair? Yes? In Petawawa, we were speaking to an ALAV operator, and he took us around in an ALAV, and we were having discussions with this young man. What the issues were for him, and he told us that he was quite happy about the wage increases and our commitment to housing. His issue, he was certified as a gunner. And his story is that he was certified as a gunner 2 years ago. And then for 2 years, there was a lack of ammunition to actually train with for him to be operational. Let's say he were to be deployed to Latvia. Will the investments we're making mean that our soldiers will have the ammunition they need to train and to be more operational when they get sent abroad? In short, yes. When the Defense Industrial Strategy will be published in the next few months, I hope, I think you'll see major decisions taken by Canada where we really want to focus on rebuilding. No, maybe not the term rebuilding is not the right term, but expansion of the defense industrial sector as a whole, the investments. We saw with INT Precision that they can now produce 5,000 artillery shells per month. That's an increase of 2,000 per month since compared to the figures from December 2023. Under our defense policy, the department already plans to invest $9.5 billion over 20 years to build a strategic supply of ammunition. And so we have a plan. Now it's about implementing it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Savard-Tremblay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Minister. Welcome to the defense team in general. Thank you for being here today. Minister, you were here on the day that the Auditor General tabled her report. I would imagine that you were expecting a few questions on that. I'm a kind guy. I'll just quote from the report and let you react. In the report, one of the two reports have the title of which the first one is Recruiting for Housing Canadian Armed Forces. So it says the CAF is not managing things correctly to meet the needs of the CAF members, that the CAF does not have reliable information about furnished housing. The defense said that it needed up to 7,000 extra units and that its own projected housing projects still involved a deficit of housing. The CAF did not even know where the new cadets would go. The new recruits would be sent in terms of which bases. I know that you're relatively recent to your position in the last few months. Efforts will be made to increase recruitment, as we know. The average age of these quarters. You know, the buildings are about 60 years old. There have been issues with wastewater, clean water, and building and updating, etc. What are going to be the priorities for 2025, 2026? That's an excellent question. I'm pleased to see that the Auditor General studied the matter and gave us recommendations. For a while now, we've been working to improve the situation. The analyses were done on the system as it stands. There's more information today than there used to be, based on the auditor's report. But this year, I was in Edmonton. We're building 36 new units. We're talking millions of dollars. It's almost complete. In Borden, I visited a new home where there are 300 new units being built, 824 new units that are being worked on, that have been purchased in Esquimalt, Borden, Gagetown, Halifax, Kingston, Petawawa, Trenton, and Valcartier. So there are some in Quebec as well? Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of work to do. We're currently reviewing some new ways of doing things, like, for instance, purchasing an apartment building. This is new. Major contractor can do renovations throughout the entire country rather than have a local contractors here and there. Everything's on the table. The money is there in terms of investments. Now we're talking about implementation, and that's exactly what we're doing. Are the resources enough? Are they sufficient? You say the money's there, but what I've learned is the problem is really often on the ground. It's difficult sometimes to find the right contractors, the engineering specialists, those who set up HVAC, as they say, those who work on design, people who work with cement. I mean, there are delays. It's often the case. And so we have to work strategically with these providers. Can you tell us about the other report having to do with recruiting for Canada's military? Also tabled this morning, it says that the forces have not recruited or trained enough people to meet the needs. There's 6,000 regular forces members missing, 8,000 some reserve forces, and 71,500 reserves, and 30,000 reservists would be the ideal. 1 out of 13 people were recruited, and most people would give up halfway through the process. So millions are being spent by Ottawa for planes and ships, but we don't have the staff to operate them. What does this mean? And do you think the budgets that have been called for are required to get that workforce we need to meet these needs? Before I ask General Carignan to help me out with this question, I would say that there's a major factor, that is the wages and benefits announcement. That has a major impact on the number of recruits. 65% more people are interested in being recruited than last year, interested in enlisting. Thank you. Yes, the observations and recommendations of the OAG are taken on board. It's absolutely critical for us to improve our recruitment system. Of note, in the course of this report being drafted, we were actually working on changing our procedures, and we had new investments that were underway. We digitized procedures to some degree. So we've made many changes over the last year, which means that for the year that ended in April, we've gone beyond our target by over 200 people for the first time in the last 10 years. So the changes are definitely bearing fruit in terms of personnel. Now this year, where do things stand? We've seen good results with respect to retention. We have an extra 200 people, and we are expanding. All of this is certainly due to these new investments, compensation schemes, and the rest. Currently, we're halfway through the year. By the end of September, we stand at 58% of our targets, and our target is higher than last year. Last year, we were targeting 6,500. Now we are aiming for 7,000 regular armed forces members, and we are set to meet that target, even though the target is more ambitious when it comes to recruitment. We are currently making improvements to everything else in terms of training. There were some initial changes that we made last year, but this year we want to make sure that we have the capacity to train all the new members that join the Canadian Armed Forces.
Folks, we do have a member of our legislature with her hands up, but I did want to provide some unanimous consent to allow someone who's not part of the membership to ask a question. Do we have unanimous consent? No. I'm sorry, Ms. Lidhout, we don't have consent for interaction. We appreciate you being on Zoom to witness the proceedings. At this point, Ms. Gallant, you have up to 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, and through you, in response to a critical shortage of pilots and to prevent them from being poached from commercial airlines, pilots were offered increases based on years of experience, but now we have lower ranks making more money than their superiors. How are you going to ameliorate this discrepancy?
That's an excellent question and a difficult one. I think we all recognize that the Canadian Armed Forces have been having some difficulty for some time recruiting and training and keeping pilots. This is not unknown to the Canadian Armed Forces, or to armed forces around the world, with commercial contracts being so attractive. I have confidence in the decisions that were made by the Royal Canadian Air Force operational experts who brought in a series of new packages
but you're going to think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
In parallel with the delayed pay increase slated for next month, a majority of recipients who receive the Canadian Forces housing differential are expected to see a decrease in their entitlement. Given that we have a huge cost of living crisis, why was it the decision made to give our troops a cut in the housing differential given the pay raises?
And ask the operational expert if you don't mind.
Actually,
do you mind?
Could you? We're going to have the CDS later, so we can ask for that later.
I would ask you to defer the details to the general, if you could, afterwards.
All right. Recruiters, for example, 450 Squadron used to do in-person outreach, but everything's gone online now, and applicants cannot even confirm whether or not their submissions were received. Why is it that there is no follow-up for the thousands of people who go online, provide their applications, but they don't hear from you or anyone for months, 6 months at a time, even longer?
Yeah, again, an excellent question. By moving to an app-based system, we've obviously driven up significantly the number of applications from paper copy. Of how we now respond to those folks who press send, for example, with incomplete applications is something we're examining. Do we want to go back and use that baseline of applicants to reapproach them or return to them to say, did you make a mistake? Did you forget to send all the information? Would you like to continue with the application? We're examining this internally to make sure that we don't let good quality folks slip through the cracks. So that's a very perceptive question that we're trying to address internally as we beef up the whole recruitment process. And as you know, we brought in the app-based process. We brought in many changes to the medical requirements for that application process. And it seems to be having a positive effect, as the General indicated a second ago.
So your government promised the F-35 review to be completed by the end of this summer. Why have you not released it yet?
Because it's not complete, because the F-35 review is still underway. because we're going to take the time we need to get this right. And it is a very, very complicated issue for Canada. And that's exactly where we're at. So we're going to take the time that we need to get it done, and that's what we're doing.
And when do you expect it to be released to the public?
It's difficult for me to answer that question. It's underway. It's obviously primarily conducted by the department and by the CAF, but it has, of course, a bearing on the Prime Minister and the Privy Council office, and those things are combining to take the time that this whole process needs.
So a previous witness, Mr. Richard Shamuka of the McDonald-Laurie Institute, testified that the F-35 procurement is being used as a bargaining chip in your government's trade negotiations with the United States. How can you justify putting that expense against our national security?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that characterization. I am in constant touch with the Pentagon. I was down to see Secretary Hegseth 2 weeks ago and saw him again last week at the NATO meeting. The level to which we are working in cooperation with the United States on security, intelligence, and defense is unshaken in my view. So I think that this is a bit of a mischaracterization.
So we're short of pilots to begin with, we talked about earlier. What's the interoperability of having two different fighter jets in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and how would they perform together effectively, given that most of our allies are going to be flying F-35s?
There'll be a total of 21 countries in the world flying F-35s, and so far none other. There are many jurisdictions in the world who have dual fleets, including Australia, including the United States. But the question of dual fleet is not one that I'm seized with at this stage. I'm waiting for the results of the review that's being conducted, and we'll have more to say about that. But the question of interoperability is a very important one, particularly as it deals with IAMD and NORAD responsibilities.
And interoperable within our own military, an F-35 pilot doesn't necessarily know how to fly a Gripen. So that has not been solved yet. How much is your government estimating to lose if you axe the rest of the F-35 order?
I'm sorry, how much we expect to what, sorry?
So how much is the government expecting to lose if you axe the rest of the F-35 order?
Cancellation fee.
So that, I can't answer that question presently. My understanding is that the terms of that agreement are fixed, but also negotiable. So I don't know if that is something that is even being taken into account right now in the assessment that's going on. I think that the technical assessment that's going on with the F-35s is primarily a technical assessment.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Gallant. I will now move over to Ms. Lapointe. You have 5 minutes.
Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for being here today. Minister, my first question relates to NATO defense spending targets. And NATO allies often look to Canada as a trusted and steady partner. And how does this year's increased defense spending enhance our interoperability and our leadership within NATO operations, particularly in areas such as cyber defense, logistics, and Arctic surveillance?
It's had a profound effect. The commitment and the realization in the world that we're actually stepping up and joining the ranks of our colleagues in NATO, and that we co-negotiated the 5% target for 2035 has had a profound effect on Canada's credibility and ability to deliver. So I think that's a very, very positive thing for us as we re-engage domestically, continentally, and internationally. And those three are somewhat different. Certainly at the NORAD level, with the NORAD modernization plans that were announced some years ago, $38 billion if I recall, this is going to have a profound effect on our ability to defend our airspace here continentally. So these things coincide. I remind my NATO colleagues regularly that Canada has that special continental responsibility. Many of them don't. And nowhere is that more important than in the context of the Arctic, where Canada is being asked primarily by the United States and other NATO countries to take on a greater share of the responsibility when it comes to security and sovereignty in the Arctic. So a lot of the investments that are forthcoming will be addressing that question. Forward operating location expansion, NOSHs as they're called, the possibility of deep sea ports, the question of electrification of the north, the question of dual and multi-use, expanding landing strips. All of this is under consideration. All of this is being planned. So this has been a very, very major, significant announcement to the world that Canada is serious about rearming, reinvesting, rebooting its armed forces after, frankly, I think it's fair to say, governments of all stripes for the last 30 or 40 years have been a little bit, maybe even neglectful. So I think right now this is the time, and I think that's why I hope members at this table agree that what we're doing now is the right thing at the right time.
Our partners agree. Minister, you talked about NORAD modernization. So can you elaborate on how these new funds, because the budget makes significant investments in NORAD modernization, how are these new funds being directed, and how do they reinforce Canada's role in terms of continental defence?
First, these are big numbers and a little bit astonishing for Canadians, I'm sure, but this is the cost of doing business today in the world when it comes to advanced technology and investments. We're investing $38.6 billion over 20 years to modernize Canada's NORAD capabilities. For example, we're working with Australia now on an Arctic over-the-horizon radar system. This is a profoundly important system. We will know in Canada, and our American colleagues will know, our American neighbors will know what may be coming at us on from over the Arctic, whether it's the Canadian Arctic or over Alaska. So we've got 2 sites in Southern Ontario that are expected to be operational by 2029. National Defence is also working on many issues with Indigenous, territorial, provincial partners. The question of IAMD, Integrated Air and Missile Defense, is one that I'm pursuing with the Pentagon, working with the Secretary of Defense now. The Prime Minister announced some months ago that after 20 years of a bit of a chill on discussions with the United States on this question, it was important for us to have those conversations, and we are having those conversations to see where this comes to ground, how we come to ground. We've also, as I mentioned, got these forward operating locations in Inuvik, in Yellowknife, in Iqaluit, and a deployed operating base in Goose Bay. So all of these efforts are going to support NORAD operations, give us new capabilities, and improve our readiness in the north. This is what people are expecting of us as we assert our security and our sovereignty over the Arctic.
The Canada and U.S. defense relationship is one of the closest in the world. How do the new defense investments, particularly those tied to NORAD modernization and strategic capability development, how do they strengthen our shared security with the U.S. while also creating opportunities for Canadian companies, Canadian workers, and our regions to participate in that work?
Big question, important question. First thing I would say is if we consider the relationship in security, defense, and intelligence with the United States as a home that we've built on both sides of the border, and there are 40 or 50 rows of cinder blocks on the foundation, I would say 30 bottom rows of those cinder blocks remain absolutely untouched. There's been no frost heaving, no leaking, no heaving or shifting. That relationship is fundamentally strong and continues. Remember, we have the only binational command in the world. NORAD is the only binational command in the world. It's a great privilege to be able to work with our American neighbors. And so Canada is going to continue to manage that relationship very carefully. There are some very big modernization investments going on in surveillance systems, threat identification, response speeds, ability to deter and defeat aerospace threats, ensuring that CAF can deploy and sustain a strong military presence across the country, including in the north, future-proofing NORAD's ability to defend North America through investments in science and technology, the over-the-horizon radar system I mentioned earlier, the first tranche of which is about $6.5 billion, and the list is long. So all of this will allow for Canada to dig down and to build a defense industrial base which is ready for takeoff and for growth. We've got 600 companies now in this space. Personally, I'd love to see that doubled. That's my personal ambition, if we can get there, or at least taking our companies that are significant players and doubling their books of business, which is also why we went to the European Union and signed on to the SAFE agreement, which is a $1.25 trillion marketplace for defense over the next decade. There's a lot of opportunity for Canadian businesses here, a lot of job creation. I think we all know that, and we're very excited by it.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. You have up to 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci. On va parler de langue.
Thank you. I think the language is also an important issue for retaining members. There are many jobs that really require English. They may supposedly be bilingual. Most specialized jobs, cyber, specialized, even trades like infantry and others really are English focused. Whenever there is training offered, it is impossible, nearly impossible to get training strictly in French. There's no support for Indigenous languages either. For rangers who are forced to speak English rather than their own language, like Inuktitut. This is something we're noticing. Can we expect some strong measures on this? I think that would have an effect on retention. If all courses were made available in French and in Indigenous languages, that would help. Is that part of the plan? Is there a timeline for that? These are excellent questions, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. This is not something I've looked at more closely, but one interesting thing to note is that I was recently speaking with a representative for Francophone countries in NATO, and he was actually asking me the same thing. He said, what are you doing in Canada? It's not easy for us because so much information, so much equipment is manufactured in Germany, the U.S., even Canada. Often these manuals are in English. It's the international language, sure, but it's an important question. I'd like to bring that back and get back to you on that. Yes, it's actually absolutely possible for you to provide the committee with any further information that you may gather. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left? In 30 seconds. Okay, well, to get back to the issue of the gaps in the area of recruitment and retention, in general, you were referring to goals that were being met increasingly, but that 100,000 that had been set, do you think you'll reach that, 100,000 new recruits? So the first phase is to get back to our full complement of 71,500 actually total military staff. April 2029 is the goal for that, which is far earlier than 2032, which was the initial goal. Additional investments mean faster progress towards those goals. Anything that can support recruitment activities, funds to attract people, marketing, headhunters for specialized or areas that are in distress. We have many tools at our disposal to seek out the people that we need. So that's the first phase. Then, now that was for the regular forces. 14,000 positions are being considered for new capabilities we are currently creating. All of this will come together over the coming years, and then we'll be able to have the capacity we need as well as the membership we need to integrate that within the Canadian Armed Forces.
Now we're now going to Mr. Kimball. I think you may be splitting with Mr. Anderson, and you have combined up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is through you to the Minister. Bill C-12 Oceans Act implies the Coast Guard will report under Department of Fishery and Oceans, and in fact, I asked yesterday in the House of Commons the Parliamentary Secretary to Public Safety this question, and he has stated Coast Guard will fall under the DFO. He then stated the Coast Guard will fall under 2 departments. So, Minister, could you please clarify, will the Coast Guard continue to fall under Department of National Defence as indicated in the recently signed OIC?
Yeah, the Coast Guard, the Canadian Coast Guard will fall under the Department of National Defence. Amendments are being made in C-12, which is the new C-2, to amend the Oceans Act to give the Coast Guard the authority it needs to move from, it gives it the authority to be able to provide information which would be used for security purposes.
He was for public safety was confused then on his answer?
I don't know what department, I'm not
Okay,
sure what
well,
they said.
I told
to
you
begin
what
with,
he'd said,
but
fair enough. It just seemed like a bit of a...
I'll take a look at that.
Yep, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And C-12 tasked the Coast Guard with security patrol, surveillance, intelligence gathering. Presently, they're not equipped to do that. So what are the cost estimates, time estimates to equip, train the Coast Guard to support their added tasks?
I can't give you an exact timeline right now. I think the commissioner might be better placed afterwards because you might want to hear from. Well, then I will turn to the expert. Sir?
Well, we'll ask those questions
ask them
later.
later? Okay.
If that's all right. The Prime Minister stated that Canada will not split submarine contract. Will you commit the same for F-35 program for the same reasons for not splitting the submarine contract, for not splitting F-35 aircraft program?
I think once the review is completed, we'll be in a much better position to address that question of mixed or non-mixed fleets. But thank you for asking.
Okay. We'll look forward for that information, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Sir, we've heard testimony here that the world is a much more dangerous place and has become more dangerous over the past 10 years. We are lacking recruitment, we're lacking soldiers, equipment, and housing for those soldiers once we get them. Can you tell me why these are, so we're essentially starting from ground zero. Can you tell us why the plan is so back-end loaded?
I'm not sure, I don't think we are starting from ground zero, but we're certainly catching up very quickly. And we're making decisions that are expediting things. And with the new procurement agency that's being stood up by mid-November, you're going to see a speed of acquisition, the likes of which this country's never seen, because we've never had this kind of structure.
With respect, I'm asking why we're putting most of the money at the back end of this procurement when we're in a fairly dangerous position right now and under-equipped and undeployable, frankly, in the north.
What do you mean by the back end? Help me understand.
Well, I mean, long after your government is no longer in power, the rest of this money is being spent. Very little is being spent at the front end when we're in a bit of a crisis situation right now.
$63 billion is being spent this fiscal year, including an additional $9.3 billion that was announced in June. That's going to have a profound effect. That was, for example, $2 billion or more that are going into the pay and other package increases for folks. That's having a great bearing on keeping people and bringing them into the system. I think that's one of the reasons why recruitment's up. There's a lot of very immediate investments that are going on right now. There are contracts being let. There are acquisitions underway. So I don't know if it's all back-ended.
On that subject, then, do we have a formal procurement strategy? Do we have something written down, a plan to procure the things that we need? Do we have a strategic plan, first of all?
We have a defense industrial agency which is being stood up, the details of which will be made public very shortly. That's going to have a great bearing on any acquisition over $100 million. Here's something else that we've done. We've actually given more local authority. We've given more purchasing power to folks who are on our bases, for example, our commanders, our L1s.
At a time, I just have one more question here. Do we have a comprehensive CSAR? Do we have a CSAR plan, communications strategy to go forward on? Do we have a plan to move forward?
You forgive me, it's not a term
it's an acronym. It's a military acronym. It's a Command, Communications, Computer Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. It's essentially a plan that says, what are we going to buy? When are we going to buy it? Do we have one?
C4ISR. It's what we call C4ISR. This is, in fact, command and control suites and digital systems that allow us to combine a massive amount of data and then be able to read from sensors and analyze what we are actually seeing to make decisions.
Right. Have something in place for that?
Yes, we have plans and programs that are evolving over the next few years to rapidly get to a good place as we are onboarding new capabilities like River Class and so on and so forth. So absolutely.
The reason I'm asking is because we're actually making movements forward. We've moved the Coast Guard under the DND umbrella, but it doesn't sound like we've got a strategy in place. Is that a fair statement?
No, I don't think so. It's not a fair statement. We're in the middle of planning the retrofitting of existing vessels. We're procuring new vessels, lots of them. They will be equipped and fit up with the equipment that we need to be able to pursue our IAMD objectives, which is basically making sure that what happens in the air, what happens on the water, what happens below the water, what happens on land, and what happens ultimately in space will be connected. That's exactly what an IAMD system is. That's what we're contemplating for North America. Those are the kinds of conversations we're having with the United States, and we've been having for 20 years with the United States, up to a certain extent. We've lifted the freeze, and now we're more fulsomely pursuing that.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson. We're over time. Monsieur Chris Mallet, over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you firstly both for both your visits to my riding in the Bay of Quinte this summer to visit CFB Trenton and 8 Wing there, as well to General Kerrigan for her visit as well in August for the announcement there as well. So your announcement specifically, Minister, of the $850 million investment into CFB Trenton was very well received and appreciated by those stationed there and their families. And I've had the opportunity to hear firsthand some of that over the summer, and it's been very, very well received. This important project, the $850 million into the infrastructure, is strengthening our operational capabilities and supporting economic growth in my riding. Could you tell us a little more about the effort in modernization of our air mobility, and in specific to air mobility as it's affecting my region, CFB Trenton and 8 Wing, and the impact of infrastructure, those infrastructure upgrades at 8 Wing?
Let me take a second if I could, just at a maybe 10,000-foot level, just to remind Canadians how important national defence and CAF is to the Canadian economy. Everything we do, every dollar we invest is about also economic benefits for Canadians, Canadian companies and workers. And we're going to need to pull up the slack. There will be sunrise and sunset industries in Canada, as there always are. Canada's defence and security industry generates about $14 billion in revenue now. That's 81,200 direct jobs and over 200,000 indirect jobs. $9 billion in GDP to Canada's economy. For example, when I met with Irving Shipyards, 2,400 local employees and 10,000 knock-on jobs across the country in terms of the supply chain. So when we were in Trenton announcing the $850 million, it was very clear to us that not only was this important for the acquisition of the new refuelers, the Huskies, to refuel our fighter jets in the sky, and to use those aircraft to do many other things. It was also very clear to us that this would create 1,000 full-time jobs in the Trenton area for some time. These are bricklayers and cement workers and HVAC and electrics and design and steel and aluminum and acquisition and logistics. So if you multiply that, Mr. Millett, across the country in terms of the investments we're making on bases, it's astonishing. I had this conversation with Premier Smith in Alberta, who was shocked to learn at the extent to which the Canadian Armed Forces is investing in Alberta. Billions of dollars of economic activity in Alberta, which is going to have a profound effect on jobs. The apartment building that's being built at CFB Edmonton, I met the folks who design it. It's designed in a way that we can take the design, shrink wrap it, and replicate it all over the country, because we own the IP, we own the architectural design, we own the engineering design, but the jobs that created in the Edmonton, city of Edmonton and the region were just incredible. So if you multiply this over and over again at 33 bases and in up to 3,000 communities where the Canadian Armed Forces are located in Canada, you see the potential impact as being dramatic.
And further to that, my earlier mention that this summer on that visit and when the Prime Minister made the announcement, giving our forces a well-deserved pay raise, something that had been neglected, as you pointed out as well, Minister, for several governments and several years. $2 billion in pay and benefits. I know it's already impacting the Bay of Quinte region and other regions where CAF members live, work, and the civilian spin-offs as well. untrained soldiers, sailors, privates, aviators will receive 20% pay raise. Can you just give us a little bit of a high-level view of how this pay raise and compensation package will help in the retention? We've spoken a little bit about retention today. Is this showing an impact? I believe the numbers are up, but do we have any way to quantify how that may be affecting the recruitment and retention?
We will, more specifically over time, as these pay increases kick in, retroactive to April 1st. So members will be getting a lump sum payment very, very shortly. So it's going to be important for us to monitor the effects of that. We'll take a first year private from 42 or 43 to $53,000 a year, plus other benefits. So it's a question of watching now to see. But look, it's important for us to try and to remember collectively. We ask the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces to do some pretty difficult things. We ask them to relocate frequently. We ask the young woman mechanic from Bagotville to get on a plane and fly off to Cold Lake for a month away from her family and kids to repair helicopters, right? We ask all kinds. There is no collective bargaining. There is no overtime. Right? We ask these people to give us a lot, and our view is we need to meet them in the middle in terms of what they give with what we supply and support them with. And we're of the view that if we invest the right way in pay and remuneration and incentives and annual bonuses and recruitment and retention and housing and childcare and healthcare and dental, all the things that this department and the Canadian Armed Forces is called to do, the more that we do, the better that we do that, the higher performing our Canadian Armed Forces will be. This is well established around the world. If we have people worried, looking over their shoulder, not able to do their jobs because something isn't right in the balance of their lives, it will not help us achieve our secure and sovereign objectives.
Minister, committee members, that concludes your time, sir. Thank you very much for your comprehensive discussion and deliberations. We very much enjoyed your presentations. I'm going to suspend for a moment, folks, so that we can then restructure ourselves. Thank you again, Minister.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Very appreciated.
Thank you very much. This is for General Kerrigan. We've talked about fighter jets, tanks, artillery, better wages. I remember the equipment itself, the basic equipment, uniforms, guns, armor, things like that. Are there any commitments on the books right now for that?
Yes, there is various programs right now to modernize all of our services across the board. So we are in a major transformation position. And we are also organizing this transition very deliberately as we move into new equipment or sometimes equipment that we don't have or capabilities that currently don't exist. So the challenge for the Canadian Armed Forces at the moment is continuing to do the business of defense because clearly we cannot put defense on pause while we are effecting this transformation. So we are, this is the priority, both transformation, but at the same time ensuring that we are pursuing our defense missions.
We are producing 155 millimeter shells. We've seen in Ukraine how fast we go through munitions like that. My understanding is that the Americans are taking most, or that we are producing shells for the Americans more than we are for us. Is that correct?
So this is not my field of expertise. Maybe I can ask a colleague for...
Thank you, General, and I'm happy to chime in on this question. So 155 millimeter shells absolutely is a priority of ours. So as the Minister mentioned, we have made investments into, for example, IMT Precision to be able to increase the production of those shells per month, so up to 5,000 per month.
Yes.
In addition, we are looking at investing into a new production line that would provide a new variant of 155 millimeter.
Okay.
So there are discussions underway for that.
And concurrently with that, are we producing shells for the Americans as well?
So the U.S. would have their direct contracts with suppliers that would be on a commercial basis.
Okay, that's not a no. The delays on the F-35, are they costing us tens of millions or hundreds of millions? Do we have a figure on how much this sort of business is costing us?
So currently, we are moving ahead with the current plan with the F-35. So like we are pursuing this until the review shows us otherwise. So we are moving ahead with the construction, the infrastructure that is required to, and then we are moving ahead with the training. So the program is basically continuing as planned.
Okay. No, my question was, how much is this costing us? Do we have an estimate on how much the delays are costing us?
So there is no delays. We are on track with the spending as programmed.
The F-35 has been a topic of discussion for years and years and years, and it keeps on being delayed. We're moving ahead with the infrastructure for it, and why are we doing that if we don't know if we're going to get the F-35? But my question is, how much is Canada paying for these delays? If we don't know, then we don't know. But that's my question.
Heather, do you?
So I would agree that there are no costs associated with the delay. There was an OAG report recently that talked about the increased costs with respect to the CF-35s, and I can provide some breakdowns on that if you're interested in that. But
General Kerrigan, what do you think is the area we should be concentrating on the most? What is the most crucial right now in militarization?
So from a military perspective, and this is based on our current defense policy and previous defense policy, so we are basing our priorities on the demands from our North strong and free and secure, safe, secure, and SSE, strong, secure, engage. So the priority is the defense of Canada and the Arctic. So we are investing both in terms of capabilities, but also in terms of planning and programming to secure Canada, which is why the minister has been talking about integrated air missile defense, its multi-domain awareness, and then again, equipping ourselves to conduct those type of operations. We have to understand that over the past 35 years post-Cold War, the Canadian Armed Forces were asked for fundamentally different type of missions. So the type of mission that we are required to do now and in the future are fundamentally different, hence the requirement for those transformations that are currently ongoing.
Okay. And that's a good point that we are fighting now. We are preparing for symmetrical warfare rather than asymmetrical warfare, and that's why my questions are of this. Where's the implementation plan? Do we have debate, command structure, coordination with DFO, and do you know when it's going to be tabled at all?
I'm happy to start, Mr. Chair, and the Commissioner may want to weigh in. So in terms of the integration of the Canadian Coast Guard into defence, there was an order in Council, as someone mentioned earlier, and then between ourselves and DFO, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we are negotiating a memorandum of understanding that will lay out the transition plan for that integration over time. But it will be a very orderly approach, but the Coast Guard is formally part of defence.
Time is up. I am going to pass it over to Chair Renato. You have up to 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Puis j'aimerais remercier les témoins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank the witnesses for being here, and I'll be sharing my time with Member Reeves that is online. I'll start with the General Carignan. General, could you tell us a little bit about culture change? Over the last 2 years, we've noticed, given all the work that's been done on harassment, all those cases and the recommendations from the Arbor report, could you tell us a little bit about your opinions on this? 6 minutes? Yes. I'll start by mentioning that when we talk about misconduct in organizations, it covers all forms of misconduct, and it's generally a symptom of a culture that makes it admissible to engage in conduct that is actually unacceptable. But over time, this conduct becomes normalized. What became clear when we embarked on a culture change is that this is organizational culture that we want. We want to optimize the performance of our teams when they are in very difficult, hostile circumstances. The purpose is to ensure at the end of the day that we have strong teams. We have multidisciplinary mechanisms in place. It's not just one change. It's not just the implementation of recommendations that'll be doing the work. It's a combination of a number of things. When it comes to implementing the recommendations, we focused on 4 reports specifically, 194 recommendations. We've reached 174 out of 194 that have now been addressed. Madame Arbor's report will be nearly completed by December 2025. So much work has been done, and we're continuing this work on the rest of the recommendations. Now, broadly, we've made a number of changes to basic training, reforms in terms of leadership development. We've introduced character-based leadership. We introduced a probation period. We changed our personnel selection procedures for command positions, and we want a diversity of experience within our teams as well. to encourage agility in responding to complex problems. Our teams often face very unexpected and complex problems in operations here in Canada and abroad. So diversified teams are the recommended solution to addressing these more complex problems. We've made changes and improvements to our military grievances process. We have to make sure that complaints lead to the creation of stronger teams. By managing these complaints within teams in a better way, then we create a stronger culture and stronger teams that have relationships that are based on trust amongst themselves. We've also struck a team for supporting leadership, which is involved in a number of units in training here and abroad, specifically to address systemic problems. I mean, I could go on, but essentially there are many initiatives underway, and we're seeing results in terms of culture change and the level of comfort people have with the way we're doing things. Thank you very much. I'll cede the rest of my time to MP Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee members for having me today, and to our witnesses for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here. My question is for General Carignan. Thank you, General, for taking the time. 2 weeks ago, I attended the Montreal Climate Security Summit, where Minister of National Defense provided the keynote remarks, speaking to the multifaceted relationship between climate change and climate change impacts and the Canadian Armed Forces and Canadian security and defense issues. In his remarks, he was very clear about what some of those connections are, but I wonder if perhaps from a more operational level, General, you might speak to the way in which climate change impacts are affecting the infrastructure and operational readiness of the Canadian Armed Forces in different parts of the country.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So I would qualify climate change as accelerators to the various threats we are facing. I think Mr. Anderson was talking a bit earlier about hybrid threats. What we could use as an example is climate creating an acceleration of various threats coming together, and especially when we're speaking about the Arctic. Where as the Arctic becomes more accessible due to climate change, the more human you have around, the more diverse the threat is going to be. And then military is one of them. But we need to think about criminal, dual-use research being conducted, search and rescue, and so on and so forth. So I think we could also say that with the Coast Guard joining us in defense is actually a way of joining our strength together to face those converging and hybrid threats in a better fashion, as we have different capabilities and we can join our forces to address that. But climate change is also affecting our rate of involvement in domestic operations in Canada. They have doubled into what we have usually seen over the years, and it's creating a huge demand on your Canadian Armed Forces to be responding to that. As we speak, we are still involved in Nova Scotia in supporting their efforts in fighting forest fires still at this time of the year, which is unheard of.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. Greaves. I'm going to pass it over to Monsieur Savard-Tremblay. You have 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be inclined to ask my questions of General Carignan, but if anyone else wants to chime in, please do so. We know that Canada is facing some gaps when it comes to anti-missile and anti-drone and anti-helicopter defense. There is no portable anti-weapons. The tanks are outdated. There's no combat weaponry. There are many plans, but there is no plan that we've heard about, at least. You might have an internal plan. So any type of clear objectives in this area to update all the equipment by a given date. First off, does such a plan exist, at least for you internally? Yes. We have a very clear idea of the needs we have, both for the defense of Canada and our work on the eastern flank in Latvia. There are some clear needs for anti-air missiles that are identified, and today our troops in Latvia are equipped. They have short-range equipment, and we have plans to deliver the other systems. They need to also cover short, medium, and long ranges. As we are building capacity at the same time, so the people that are going to be operating this equipment will also need to be ready to operate this. All of the work is underway. The timelines are over the next few years to ensure that we have these defensive systems at play. With respect to drones, we currently have anti-drone systems for our bases here in Canada. We also have them in Latvia. And we are closely, dynamically integrated with the Transformation Command at NATO that is ensuring that we collect all the lessons learned from Ukraine so that we can adapt them and use them here. In Canada, our services are now getting equipped with drones. The Royal Canadian Marines, the Army, the Special Forces, and the Air Forces are looking at these drones that have capacity to adapt and that are adapted to whatever area they would be used in. That is definitely underway. Would it be possible to get a document here at the committee so we could have an idea of what's underway? Certainly. I would imagine I have no more time. I thought it was a half a turn, 2 minutes. No? Oh, it's a full one. Okay, great. I realize it's the first one for this turn, this round of questions. Very well. Great. We love it. Let's keep going. Why stop when you're having fun? So let's get back to serious issues and tragic things like the risk of a conflict in Taiwan. We know the risk is high. We've heard that it could be over a short term. China has set some dates for a potential attack, and the fact that Canada be engaged in an armed conflict, military conflict, is not unimaginable. This is realistic, and I would imagine you're preparing. Do we know when the CAF will be completely operational to face such a high-intensity conflict? Clearly, we're always prepared to fight, and this is what we've always done. That's what military forces do. We ensure that we have capacity to fight within the constraints we have to face. No one can predict exactly when such a conflict could occur. But what we do here in Canada and with our allies in the Indo-Pacific region are deterrence activities to counter the forces at play in that major area of the world. We work closely with many allies in the region. We have maritime cooperation exercises. We have capacity development projects. Each one has varying needs. For instance, it could be cyber, it could be second language, it could be peace operations. We respond to our partners in the regions to join in, and the effect that we want to have in the Indo-Pacific region is a deterrence effect. And if we manage to do that, then we strike a balance between the forces, and there's a less of a likelihood that we would be involved in an armed conflict.
I'm Mr. Kibble. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. General, thank you for your service, and I appreciate you're in a very demanding and challenging job, and it's reflective of your excellence to become Chief of Defence Staff. My question, the Minister stated recruitment is up 50% last year. Could you just clarify, is that 50% walking through the door of recruiting centre or 50% that are walking through the door at basic training?
I think the 50% is where we are at in a year. So what we like to do is from year to year, we like to compare the trends to see how we are doing compared to how we were last year. So.
Is that people applying, or is that people that are actually being recruited and arriving at basic training? There's a difference between those two numbers. So
yes,
is that 50%
is.
referring
so
to that?
There is there's thousands of people showing interest on a monthly basis, but they don't necessarily all come back with
I appreciate that. I'm just trying to get clarification on the Minister's comments. That 50% statistic that he used, is that for ones that are just applying or people that are actually being recruited?
Yeah, I don't think I understand.
If I'm thinking about the right statement, Mr. Chair, I believe it was about bringing in about 50% more last year than we did the year before.
To actually starting basic training,
Into
or just
enrollment.
Okay, thank you very much. As well, the Minister mentioned 36 new PMQs at CFB Edmonton. I saw them when I toured the base there this summer. They're wonderful buildings. However, command at the base indicated that there's still approximately 300 PMQs short on that base. Do you have numbers that we're short across the country for PMQs and a timeline for catching up, or a timeline for how many we're building per year nationally?
I'm happy to start on that one,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and if others want to jump in, they can. As part of, and the Auditor General actually observed this as well, we are having underway a bit of a review on our living accommodations program and what that means in terms of what our needs will be in the long term for housing, including both RHUs, so residential housing units, but also barracks, which used to be
do we have a
managed
number that
separately.
we're short nationally?
Yes, so we know that there's a shortage, but what our actual requirement will be over the long term.
So we don't know what the shortage is at the
being
moment.
developed.
Edmonton knows it's 300, but none of the other places we know a total.
So, Mr. Chair, a lot of it will be about on what time frame, as well as what local conditions will be. So that's part of the analysis.
Okay, thank you. And for Mr. Pelletier, yesterday the Public Safety Minister said the Coast Guard will play an integral role in meeting our 2% GDP NATO spending. And what adjustments will need to be made for the Coast Guard to achieve that, knowing that the NATO requirements for that spending requires Coast Guards to be able to deploy and operate as a military unit.
So the actual methodology I cannot speak to, but what the assessment is that 100% of the Coast Guard budget will count towards the NATO spending.
Okay, so the NATO requirements clearly indicate that Coast Guard vessels need to operate and to be able to deploy as military vessels. Given that the mandate is changing, what are some of the steps the Coast Guard is going to take in this transition for this new mandate?
Many steps. I think it's important to realize that Coast Guard was already collecting a lot of information for safety purposes, and the new mandate will give us the opportunity to share and receive information and collect information for security purposes.
So at the moment, the Coast Guard has navigation radar, civilian radios. Do they have the capability to collect, process, and securely transmit tactical and intelligence data to military units?
We are currently collecting information. one of the challenge, and that's what we've been working on, is how to communicate, how to gather and communicate it.
And so that collection of data is limited to visual and navigation range radars for collecting information. There's no comm intercept, electronic warfare capability, any of those types of things.
Not currently. No.
Not currently. Okay, so fair enough. And to achieve those new mandates, what are the steps that the Coast Guard will take to be to defend itself?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What steps will be required and equipment given to the Coast Guard to be able to defend itself while it's conducting these security patrols?
There's no, right now we're not looking at defending, because we're not looking at being in a theater where there'd be confrontation. Right now we're looking at occupying a space where that can be occupied and where we can collect information, pass it on to our colleagues at DND.
So you pass on information, but you won't be able to defend yourself? Or will the Coast Guard be tasked and expected, because it does say security patrols, be able to board another vessel, for example?
As we speak today, we are boarding vessels for fisheries enforcement purposes.
But that requires Department of Fisheries personnel on board to do that, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so as a standalone, as a Coast Guard unit, would the Coast Guard be capable, or are they, in the new mandate, expected to board, say, a Chinese vessel that's incurred into our Arctic waters?
Right now, again, we have people trained and equipped to do that. We don't have the mandate to do it.
So currently the Coast Guard has people trained to board, say, a foreign national vessel that's intruding into our national waters?
It depends on what threat we're looking at. So that's a pretty...
boarding they could do onto a foreign national vessel? An unopposed boarding onto a foreign national vessel, the Coast Guard is capable of doing that at the moment?
Yep, if we have the right authority on board.
Mr. Kimball. The right authority on board?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kimball? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Time is up.
Yeah, I was having fun.
Sure. Yeah, I know you were enjoying. Commissioner, thank you for your responses.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the extra minute and 60 years. Don't draw your attention.
Yeah. Over to you, Vivian. The point, you do not have 6 minutes, only 5 minutes. Yeah.
My questions will be directed to Ms. Xavier. As cyber defense becomes a core pillar of NATO's collective security, how is CSC ensuring both Canada's networks and capabilities remain fully interoperable with those of our allies, both to defend our systems, but also to contribute to joint operations?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to say that CSC, as part of its mandate, has the role of defending the Government of Canada's systems as well as our Canadian critical infrastructure, but as well as part of the work that we do, there is that interoperability with our allies. We have very great interoperability, especially with our Five Eyes allies, as well as domestically with our domestic security intelligence partners. Having said that, cybersecurity is something that everybody worries about on a global scale. We are quite concerned about the threats we're seeing that happen on a cyber scale, and so we have relationships with members of NATO as well as beyond to be able to continue to ensure that we're learning from what they're seeing, but also being able to share our advice and guidance because of all of the defense of Canada that we're doing and the systems that we are protecting. We get also the opportunity to learn a lot from our foreign intelligence mandate that we have within the CSC organization. And that is a part of our what we call our secret sauce, the ability to have the foreign intelligence help inform what we might see in cyber defense, to be able to predict what could be those cyber threats that could impact us, Canada, as well as our allies. And our allies help inform us through foreign intelligence, but as well through the cyber security side of our mandate. So ultimately, we do feel that given the amount of malicious actions we defend per day permits us to better understand what the threats are globally, but as well to Canadians. And so that is part of what we do on a regular basis.
You talk about the threats, and we know that the threat landscape continues to evolve from state actors to ransomware and hybrid operations that target critical sectors. How does this year's funding help CSC stay ahead of those complex and fast-changing threats, particularly when it comes to protecting defense supply chains and critical infrastructure like energy and communications?
So thank you for the question. So in general, our budget, we've been really fortunate to be able to been invested in since 2022. And as the various budgets have ensued, we've gotten additional investments to continue to do our part with regards to cybersecurity and securing the defense of the digital mandate of the country. I'd say that with regards to the defense investments itself that we've received, which is $370.1 million, that will also go towards NATO 2%. The full budget of CSC goes towards the NATO 2%. In that $370.1 million, the intent here is to be able to help us to modernize that digital foundation and harden it to permit that we're going to continue to have that interoperability with allies internationally, but as well with our colleagues domestically. A big part of that interoperability will be the work that we do in support of the Canadian Armed Forces so that they can also continue to have that interoperability with their allies to do the work that they do. And so a big part of our mandate is securing those that digital foundation. And so we worry about cryptography. We worry about the quantum computing threat that is coming. And part of the investment will allow us to kind of better understand how to ensure that all the digital data that we will collect, including what you heard from General Carignan a few minutes ago, will remain protected based on the investments that have been made in CSC.
Collaboration between CSC, the Canadian Armed Forces, and other departments is essential for situational awareness and resilience. Could you expand on how that partnership is strengthening, especially in support of NORAD modernization, Arctic domain awareness, and also for countering disinformation that targets Canadians and our democratic institutions? We're seeing more of it, more and more.
So as I mentioned, Mr. Chair, part of our mandate is foreign intelligence collection. So in the collection of our foreign intelligence, a big part of that is to ensure that decision makers have the insights they need to do their job, and that includes our Canadian Armed Forces decision makers. And so in that is one part of the mandate. The other part is our foreign cyber operations, which is again informed effectively by our foreign intelligence mandate as well as our cyber security defense. And in that role, we work hand in glove with our Canadian Armed Forces. In my own building, in my own agency on a regular basis, I have Canadian Armed Forces that are embedded in our agency to be able to do the work we do in the defense of Canada, especially focused on the digital front line. We have people that are also sent overseas at times with our Canadian Armed Forces to be able to continue to support them in the roles that they're playing and in the mandate that they have. Canada at home, in terms of really paying attention to the Arctic in our backyard, that is very much a priority for us, as you heard General Carignan talked about for Canadian Armed Forces. We are part of the ONSAF policy that was issued by the Government of Canada. And so we work hand in glove with CAF to be able to protect the Arctic, both from the perspective of foreign intelligence, but as well in our cyber sensors and our cyber defense. We've actually distributed sensors in the Northern Territories, and so to ensure that we're, again, having good monitoring of what could be from a cyber threat perspective. And that's in addition to working with critical infrastructure in the North. That's in addition to continuing to monitor and surveil from a foreign intelligence perspective, as well as leading multilats with international partners to be able to better understand what are the threats in the Arctic, again, to better equip our Canadian Armed Forces in the decisions that they're making. But we work literally hand in glove in the way that we work.
Thank you. Thank you for the question and the response. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, you have a whole 2.5 minutes.
On se peut plus. Comme on dit.
So great, thank you. Let's get back to where we left off. This potential conflict would require high production of weapons and munitions, so partly some civilian side production would have to pivot towards military production. Is that something that's underway? There's some very interesting work underway in the defense ecosystem it takes more than just the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defense to be well organized. As you mentioned, there's that aspect where our defense industrial base is a major aspect. The defense industrial strategy that is underway and will be published, this is something that is the foundation upon which a solid defense is built. And the Defense Investment Agency is also something that has come on board to make sure that procurement projects are done effectively, are modern, are custom made to meet our needs today. It strengthens our mandate even further. The defense industrial base that is able to provide through supply chain that is capable of producing in a context where we need more material, more equipment, more munitions. All of this is very powerful. We're quite positive about those particular changes. Do we have an idea of the timeline required for this conversion from civilian to military production? We know at this point that China said, okay, on that day, on that year, we'll attack Taiwan. If they say that, do we have time? The planning underway, as we said, we were mentioning strategic stockpiles. We are anticipating, we are analyzing, and producing estimates of how much we'll need based on what we know, so we can pre-position what we need when we need it. Currently, all those efforts to transform, to pivot and adjust, to change our posture, which is fundamentally different from what we had been asked to do in the past.
Ms. Gallant, you have 5 minutes.
Chairman, the Auditor General found that the coordination among the Treasury Board, Shared Services, and CSE was insufficient during active attacks, and an initiative was set up for a cybersecurity collaboration platform and incident case management tool, but had not received funding yet. Is it scheduled to receive funding?
Is that indeed CSC works with Treasury Board and Shared Services in order to ensure that Government of Canada systems are effectively protected. We're really grateful for the audit that has been done by the OAG, and we do feel that there's been significant progress that's been done since the OAG completed its report, where we've continued to improve the collaboration amongst ourselves as agencies in ensuring and protecting Government of Canada systems. One of the recommendations was indeed to invest in this platform, so this is part of the assessment that we're looking at, and to be able to ensure to acquire this platform to be able to have a better integration of how we do the management of incidents.
So is the money being allocated to you sufficient to get this done?
It's a question I'll have to get back to you on to kind of confirm if the money is sufficient, because I'd say that assessment is still something that we're doing.
How is the use of AI and quantum computing manifesting itself with respect to the severity and length of time an intrusion goes undetected?
Mr. Chair, every incident is unique, and every incident comes with its own complications. So it's hard to be able to answer that question in a general manner. It is fair to say, as we highlighted in our National Cyber Threat Assessment of 25-26, that AI is very much an amplifier when it comes to threats, very much has lowered the bar of entry for threat actors to want to do nefarious things in the cyber domain. That is for sure a certain activity. What I would say is that as a communication security establishment and as the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, we are doing our part to ensure that we're continuing to raise the cyber resilience across the country by ensuring we're giving proper advice, by ensuring that our sensors are rolled out in the various Government of Canada systems, including Crown corporations, and we've seen an improvement in that coverage. But I would also say that we're continuing to ensure that people are aware of what are the indicators of compromise they should be looking for. So whenever we are informed, especially from foreign intelligence, of what could be possible threats to an organization, we are notifying them of that. I'm pleased to say that last year over 300 pre-ransomware notifications were given to Canadian institutions because we were better informed because of what we saw in our foreign intelligence collection, as well as observations that we've seen from partners around the world. And so in sharing those indicators of compromise and sharing our advice and guidance, we're continuing to improve that resilience that people are better prepared for. It is very possible, however, to the point asked, that one could have artificial intelligence being used by a threat actor and could go undetected for some time. But this is why we promote the importance of defending and closing those doors and closing those windows, like following just our basic top 10 basic hygiene tips, so that already you're adding to hardening and becoming a harder target to be able to even have artificial intelligence be used against you from a threat actor.
How, if at all, do CSC and Cyber Command collaborate or interact?
Yes, no, thank you for this question, because I think myself and General Carignan are quite proud of the work that we've done in the cyber domain as two organizations. So very much so, before a year ago where the CAF Cyber Command became an official entity, we were already working jointly, as I mentioned earlier, in the foreign cyber operations space. And so what CSC offered as an opportunity to the Canadian Armed Forces was an opportunity to really become well practiced and really work towards better understanding how to do active as well as defensive cyber operations. And now that the CAF Cyber Command has stood up on its own entity, we continue to still work collectively and jointly. However, now the CAF can continue to go and do things on their own as they see fit, and I'm sure General Carignan could answer a bit more on that. But we still do joint operations despite the fact that the two entities are unique. And many times, even members of the CAF Cyber Command will work under my authorities, or I'll work under General Carignan's authority as appropriate in the defense of Canada in the cyberspace. So that is something we do all the time.
Okay, so given the inadequacies of our cyber defense in the AG report, what measures are you saying that the government will take that would give you confidence that the direction that is being taken that will ameliorate the AG's concerns?
So, Mr. Chair, I would say that I feel that from the time that the AG's report was completed, because it's over some time ago that it was done, that I've already feel that we've made significant progress in how we're continuing to defend and protect our systems. As I said, we've seen an increase in the adoption of our sensors already in our Government of Canada systems as we work with Shared Services Canada, but in particular with our Crown corporations, we've seen an increase in the use of our sensors. In addition to that, I'd say we learn a lot from every incident, and we're doing a lot more engagement with senior leaders across the Government of Canada so they can better understand what role they also have to play in when there's a cyber incident in their own organization. That is part of the advice that we are putting in place. And I would say, finally, we've put in place as well an individual by the name of Sammy Curry, who's our Government of Canada senior official on cybersecurity, for that exact reason, to be able to continue to give a support to a department who's maybe going through a cyber incident, to be able to have somebody literally be an advisor, a whispering ear, to be able to give them the advice they need while they're undergoing a cyber incident, in addition to the support we provide.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Tim Watchorn, you have up to 5 minutes.
Monsieur le Président. Moi, j'aimerais amener
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Shi, you haven't had an opportunity to answer any questions yet. The government announced the creation of the Canadian Investment Agency for Defence, the Defence Investment Agency, that is to improve procurement across the line, whether it be with respect to costs or delays, deadlines. I wonder how you view it, and how can this improve procurement?
The question, Mr. Chair. I'm excited about the Defense Investment Agency. I have only recently come to DND. I've been at DND about 3 weeks now. We have a very sophisticated project management process in place in the government, but it can be long. And we know that, right? We've seen that on many different procurements. And so I work with PSPC currently and other providers, frankly. My team also works with Defence Construction Canada, with Shared Services Canada, to actually put these procurements in place. And so currently we're working with PSPC. It's a great collaboration, but I'm looking forward to working with the Defence Investment Agency as well, because I think that their mandate to sort of reduce red tape, and also their mandate to look at how we utilize those investments for Canada in a way that makes the best sense for Canada is very exciting. We are also doing work at D&D in terms of looking at our processes. I said that we have a very sophisticated project management system. We need to have that in order to be compliant with the Treasury Board policies. But we also need to look at ways that we can ensure that procurements can be done in an accelerated fashion. And so we are doing that work as well. So I'm pretty excited about the Defence Investment Agency. I think the fact that we see investment in their title suggests that the government is really committed to actually looking at how we use our procurements to achieve both things, getting the equipment that we need for the Canadian Armed Forces, but also having the best for Canada.
I'll wait for you to put your earpiece on. Just to build on what you've just said, others may want to chime in as well. What would be the first projects the agency should start off with to make sure that we get the equipment we need as soon as possible and under budget?
The Deputy may have some views on this as well. As I already explained, I work with a number of different agencies already. So I need to continue to work with the agencies as the new investment agency gets up and running. And so as they start to bring on board some of those procurements, I will work with them. In the meantime, I will continue to work with my other clients in order to get this done. My main preoccupation, I'll be quite honest, is not to decelerate. I can't have a blip. I need to continue to ensure that procurements are going as quickly as possible, as reasonable, but still ensuring value for money for Canadians. And so that is my mandate. I think that's what the Deputy and the Associate have asked me to do to come into this position.
The only thing I'd add is that the strategy, as the Chief mentioned, that the Defense Industrial Strategy will involve a plan and clear objectives and ambition to do things differently, including with respect to procurement. So the creation of this agency is positive in that sense. And yes, okay. Just for you, Commissioner Pelletier, bring you into the conversation. In the last meetings, we heard from witnesses regarding integrating the Coast Guard within the Canadian Navy. About 100% of witnesses seem to be saying it was a good thing. I'd like your perspective on this. How do your members see things, and how do you view the future of the integration of the Coast Guard within the Canadian Navy? A point of clarification, it's not within the Navy? Oh, right, okay. The feedback I've gotten from our employees is excessively positive. Most Canadian citizens actually thought we were part of the family, the national defense family. If you look at other models in other countries, that's how things work. I'm not sure it was that much of a, rather, for some people, it was a surprise, but I haven't heard any negative feedback. On the contrary, we're looking forward to seeing how this all transpires and how we can be added value for the security of this country.
Commissioner, sensitive to time, I have only a few minutes left. Mr. Bazin, you have a few minutes, and then if I can't fit a few more, we will, but I do have a few closing remarks.
Okay. To all the witnesses for being here and for what you're doing defending Canada. All of you lead great organizations and doing a great service to all of us. And especially General Carrion, please pass on our best wishes and gratitude to every member of the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as to the Coast Guard, who we'll get to see much more often. I'm sure Commissioner Pelletier will see you here shortly in our study on the Canadian Coast Guard. So I just want to, Ms. Kim, you had mentioned that 5,000 rounds of the M155 shells for the howitzers, that is the goal. What is that current production already, or is it still the goal to get to 5,000?
As I understand, Mr. Chair, that is the actual production capacity right now.
So we did hit the goal, but still it's 5,000 a month, and in Ukraine they're burning through about 4,500 to 5,000 shells a day. Yeah, so we need to still ramp up production even more. I hope we are working towards that.
I would agree.
In the AG reports today, they weren't great for national defense. We talk about housing, and she identified a shortage of up to 7,200 residential housing units that we're currently short. The plan for national defense is to build somewhere around 38 housing units over the next 20 years, and that plan is still unbudgeted. How do we fix this? If we got people that are coming in that want to join the Canadian Armed Forces, how do we retain them when they have to live rough, when they have to go into marketplaces like Victoria, Toronto, Halifax that are super sky high in values? If we're going to be able to hang on to them, it has to be affordable, and they have to have proper living conditions, because the stock that's there, as she pointed out as well, is in pretty rough shape.
So, Mr. Chair, really two key principles that guide us here: accessibility and affordability of housing for our members. So we do have different tools that come into play for that. And just to maybe perhaps correct the numbers that we're looking at over 800 new units over the next 5 years in terms of RHUs, and we're also revitalizing our barracks and quarters.
But that's still a far cry in 5 years. It's a far cry from the 7,200 that we need. And so we got, hopefully, we're going to get to full strength and go above full strength. And that means that we have to do better. Also, in the AG reports that she came out with on the recruitment, the one thing that I found very disturbing, that when she looked at a number of the critical occupations, that only 19% of them are going to be filled within the next 4 years. And the other 81% will take 10 plus, 25 plus, or maybe never to be filled. How do we go out and fight when we're missing key occupations within the Canadian Armed Forces, whether it's pilots, technicians, weapons specialists, mechanics? Those are kind of combat engineers. These are the people that we need and we don't have, and it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to get them in the next decade.
So those estimates were based on the current path we were on, but as the report was getting ready, we had already modified our posture, which greatly changed the dynamics in terms of recruiting. So we're going to keep building on that momentum. So currently we have 5 stress trades where we are focusing our efforts. So we are currently developing a proof of concepts where we have hired headhunters to go after all of these 6 trades. We are introducing a recruiting allowance for those stress trades. We have authorities for enhanced advertising. We are also fast-tracking their
I'm glad we're doing that on recruitment, but we also know that from the AG's report that the data systems, the information collection is very siloed between services, that there is no way, a lot of it is still on paperwork and pen to paper to get things entered in. Seems to me rather cumbersome, especially in light of today's technology that's out there, and systems and ability to use things like quantum computing and AI to generate better outcomes. So why, if you really start drilling down, there's still a lot of work to do to fix. And my final question is that when you look at the recruitment uptick that we had, a lot of it is to do with changing the recruitment process, that security clearances are given during basic training or after basic training. but also the ending of the aptitude test. Has that affected the quality of the recruits?
So, in terms of your first question for digitization, the efforts are currently ongoing. So we are going in a phased approach. So last year we had the first version of various parts of the process being digitized, and then we are again this year increasing that digitization. So fully agree that paper copies and all of that is not an optimal way of doing this. So we are also revising not only our business processes but also digitizing our processes. So that is ongoing and should help in better managing the recruits showing up at our door. On your second question, which was aptitude tests. In fact, what we noticed with the aptitude test is that we had doubled the number of candidates who actually came back to continue their application in the force. So it removed a barrier. However, we are maintaining standards and quality via other means, which means that we have scorecards for the recruits. Via interviews, via the marks that they have in school, and so on and so forth. So reference, all of this is compiled together, and the aptitude test is being conducted later on. But no, we are not compromising at all the quality of Canadians showing up and offering their service to Canada.
Thank you, General. I know that we're exceeding time, and Mr. Ballet, I can give you one question, and then that'll be it, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. My question is for ADM Kim. I've noted with growing interest issues surrounding our Arctic security, given the past few meetings we've just been discussing NORAD modernization. And obviously with the evolving geopolitical circumstances, but also because the base at Alert Station on Ellesmere Island is an 8-wing unit extension from Trenton, or in my riding. My question then is, with increased interest from foreign actors in the Arctic, how is the CAF strengthening our presence and surveillance capabilities in Canada North, giving our more focused interest in that region?
Thank you very much for the question. I can start, but the Chief may want to weigh in on this as well. Yes. So I would say starting with awareness, domain awareness and detection is where I would start, and really expanding our presence in the Arctic. So that includes things like infrastructure. So we have been looking at where we are across the Arctic, but also where we need to be. Things you would have heard of, northern operational support hubs, but also how we're investing into the infrastructure in our forward operating locations for NORAD, how we are being able to project out, and the Coast Guard is certainly going to be an important part of that. The Minister mentioned some of the projects that we have underway, such as Over the Horizon Radar. There's an Arctic version of that where we bounce off the ionosphere to see what's going on down up north. But then there's a polar version of that where we're actually located in the north. There's communications and satellite capabilities in the north that we are pursuing as well. So a lot of this is really about how do we get that full picture through investments, through infrastructure, through being there.
Just if I may, and sorry, does that mean then an expansion, say, of the operations at Alert, which would in turn mean, I guess, a ramping up of more of the ancillary and support services out of 8-wing kind of thing?
I may turn that to the Chief.
So there's different ways to project power in the Arctic, and it's a combination of permanent presence. So we need to be very clear. We have a permanent presence in the Arctic, and it's done via various means. One, via various sensors, and then secondly, with our bases that are currently in the Arctic, but also via the an expanded Northern Arctic operations that we have launched. So Nanook is our signature operations that we are conducting basically 10, 11 months of the year throughout the region. Now with the Coast Guard, we'll definitely be planning our activities together, but we have already for many years collaborated again with our different capabilities. But we also need to know that there's 5,500 rangers in 205 communities. We are, the ADM spoke about the Northern Operational Support Hubs, forward operation location, extension of airfields, building of additional infrastructure to be able to house our forces as they project themselves forward in the north. The acquisition of submarines that are under ice capable. So there is various ways that we are covering actually our approaches, but also in a position to defend.
Thank you very much for your responses, for your participation today. I mean, members around this committee and the government, investments in the Canadian Armed Forces is a great priority to enhance. And the work you're doing to help transform and enable us to be better protected, not only in regards to our sovereignty, but also to our economy. And some of the engagements that we're doing relative to that is monumental, and it's certainly very concerning for all of us. So thank you again for participating. Before I adjourn, however, I do have a few items to discuss very quickly, if I may. The deputy commissioners of the Coast Guard are no longer available to appear on Thursday, October 23rd, on the committee study of the integration of the Coast Guard into the Department of National Defense. So we're working to confirm a new meeting date, and the clerk has suggested to Defense that Tuesday, October 28th, for an hour as a potential date. This has not yet been confirmed. On Thursday, however, October 23rd, given that the deputy commissioners of the Coast Guard are no longer available, it's our intention to do committee business for an hour from 8 o'clock, 8:15 to 9:15, and then the Secretary of State will appear at 9:15 to 10:15. And I've asked the clerk to circulate tomorrow's morning to members a proposed agenda for committee business on that day. And I'll take some questions in a moment. Bill C-11 has also been referred to the committee, and I would like to suggest that members start thinking about witnesses that they wish to invite for the study. And I can also confirm that the Minister of National Defense is available on Thursday, October 30th, to appear on Bill C-11. I've asked the clerk to circulate witnesses that have confirmed, that have not confirmed, so that we then can gauge more effectively how we're going to proceed going forward as a result of the fact that the commissioners, deputy commissioners, are not available this coming Thursday. Our next meeting is Thursday, October 23rd. And if there's no questions, I'd ask the committee if there's agreement to adjourn the meeting.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So Thursday, we do not have witnesses?
No, Thursday we do have.
On the second hour. Okay.
On the second, yeah.
So the reason I was asking is Chief Xavier had mentioned to me that at some point she would like to have the committee visit the CSE. So I thought you were going to have 2 hours available, and we wouldn't require Chinook or anything to get there. We could probably take the bus or walk.
No, we do have a second hour of witnesses in a meeting.
Well,
so
save that thought, because it would be valuable for the committee to see
I will do whatever
that.
you want.
Thank you.
With that, meeting's adjourned.
Mr. Chair.